Welcome, pudding people, to another episode of Everybody Loves Pudding. I'm your host, Ken Seymour. Today, I have an amazing actor as a guest. We have the fantastic Tony Winters joining us. Thank you so much for taking your time to speak with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Ken. I've been looking forward to this all week. I love pudding, especially butterscotch.
It's a good choice.
That's my favorite.
Definitely. So you have had kind of an amazing history in the industry. You've been on a lot of shows, a lot of movies that people would be familiar with. And I know there has to be just this one burning question that is on everybody's minds. I know it's definitely on mine. What was it like to work on the movie Sneakers? I mean, because that had to have been amazing.
It absolutely was. It absolutely was. To this day, it's probably still the crown jewel of my career. Even though I only had one line in the movie, I was only on it for 5 days, but it was an important 5 days because every actor in the movie, with the exception of Ben Kingsley, was in my scene. Robert Redford, Sidney Poitier, Dan Aykroyd, River Phoenix, David Strathairn, Mary McDonnell, they were all there, and James Earl Jones. It was, I remember when I got cast, I knew it was a Robert Redford film. And, you know, I've been in Hollywood for years. I was ready for Robert Redford. And when I got invited to the table read, I remember I was sitting there, you know, with my script open as the cast was starting to arrive, and, you know, in walks Redford. And I was like, okay, I was ready for that. And then walks Mary McDonnell. Okay. You know, in walks Dan Aykroyd and David Strathairn, and all these people I didn't know, and then were in the film. And then all of a sudden, Sidney Poitier and James Earl Jones walk in together. You got to understand, for a Black man in Hollywood, that was like, you know, celestial choir singing. And it's like, oh my God, two of the men that I admire more than probably anyone in this town, you know, they're walking in like they're going to work at, you know, Ford Motor Company together with their lunch buckets, and they're just chatting them. And to me, it's a pivotal moment, you know, and especially working with Sidney, because you know, when I was growing up in Detroit in the 70s, they had what was called the 430 movie. And the 430 movie would sometimes feature a certain actor for an entire week. You know, it would be Betty Davis week. It would be Paul Newman week. It would be, you know, Joan Crawford week, what have you. And there would be a Sidney Poitier week. And I would see In the Heat of the Night, you know, The Lilies of the Field, and They Call Me Mr. Tibbs, and on and on and on. And to suddenly be working with Sidney Poitier was certainly one of life's full circle moments. And the film itself is, and its subject matter is still very poignant today. You know, he who controls the information rules, and that at the heart of the movie, that's really what it was about. And so it's considered, you know, a modern classic. And here we are 30 years later, and people are still talking about it and are still moved by it. And I'm glad to have been a fly on the wall for in that very, very special movie.
And Sidney Poitier just has this ability to, and this is the thing that kind of surprised me when I watched the film in the first place, because I'm thinking, oh, kind of funny spy thing, that'd be great. But a lot of his roles have this kind of just this quiet intensity that he can bring to whatever role. And it's like, well, if he's in this, I don't remember him being in a lot of like buddy cop style of films. There's going to be something to this that I'm not seeing it. And like you said, it's always stuck with me as one of my favorites. We were lucky enough to talk with Stephen Tobolowsky a number of years ago. And, you know, he still gets people that, like you're saying, stop him and talk to him about that particular film. And it's kind of fantastic. So I had to throw that out there. It's like, oh, I remember exactly which part you had in that scene, because I know that film so well.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And just as a footnote, man, I was going through some old photographs, and I came across a picture of Aykroyd, Straight There, River Phoenix, and myself. And I was in the habit of carrying a camera. This was before the camera phone, well before the camera phone. I would grab, one of those disposable cameras and take them to set with me. And, if the moment presented itself, I would ask the star, to get a picture with. And so I think I was approaching my last day on the set, and I asked River, I said, River, can I get a picture with you? He said, yeah, absolutely, because we had kind of bonded. And he said, do you want the rest of the guys? I said, yeah, but they were like, I just wasn't that actor who ran up and started, introducing myself and trying to warm up to people. And he went and got all those guys together for this photo. And we snapped the picture. And I kind of forgotten about it. And I came across it recently. And I said, I'm going to scan this and post it on my Instagram page. And I wrote a little story about how River had gotten these guys together for the photo for me. I was overwhelmed. I had no idea that there was a world of a galaxy, I should say, of River Phoenix fans out there around the world who converged on this picture, flooded my inbox with, what do you remember about him? What was he like? And I was like, well, he was a great kid. He was wonderful. He was very sweet to me. We spent a lot of time talking. I remember my first day on the film, my van ride to set was with him. He had obviously been up all night partying, but that's his business. He was grown. But yeah, man, that was my experience after posting that photo.
Wow.
Who knew?
Well, I mean, for a lot of the time, some of the people that are with us for the shortest amounts of time sometimes have the biggest impacts. I mean, you worked briefly with another individual that I feel could have been in that same exact scenario if he had just a little bit more time. And that was Jonathan Brandis, because you were in an episode of Sequest 2032.
Yes. Wow. I was like, where's he going with this one? Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, he's another individual I talk about in the same kind of breath. Yes. Like, man, this kid had such talent, and it was, just an unfortunate situation.
He's in that great pantheon with Marilyn Monroe and James Dean and Tupac Shakur, all these people who were taken away, before their time. And there's a very special place in heaven, I like to believe, for those individuals. They burn so bright. Michael Jackson, let's not even get into the rock stars that burn so brightly that, they're only here for a short time.
So what got you into the industry to begin with? I mean, everybody enters it in a different way. I've mentioned this several times. Some people grew up in theater and grew up in this area. Some people got to it later in life. Some people, it was a college experience. Oh, I never realized it could be like this. How did the acting bug bite you to begin with?
Well, I have to be honest and say that I don't ever remember not wanting to be an actor. Even from the time I was a little kid growing up in Detroit, I wasn't one of those theater camp kids, or we didn't even have drama programs in my schools. I just would watch television. I'd go to the movies. And you got to understand, in the era in which I grew up, on television, there was That's My Mama, there was Good Times, there was Sanford and Son, and on and on and on. So I saw the Jeffersons, I saw Black people on television. At the same time, there was the Blaxploitation films of the 70s. There was Shaft, Superfly, Hammer and Slaughter and those kinds of things. And my friends and I, we would catch the bus downtown Detroit, and we go see a triple bill of Blaxploitation films and Kung Fu movies. And everybody likes movies. Everybody likes television. But I was on a different level. I wanted to be in those movies. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to be one of those guys. And I would think it was always so interesting to see an actor play one role on a television show when I was a kid, and then see him in a completely different role on another show. I said, that's the guy who was just on, Mannix,
Right.
and now he's on Barnaby Jones. I kind of want to do that. I don't know how you do it, but that's what I want to do. And so the story is kind of long, but I'll try and nutshell it. Between my junior and senior year in high school, my mom sent my younger brother and I to San Diego, California, to spend the summer with my dad. That's where they were divorced, and that's where my dad was living at the time. And he was living with my aunt and uncle, his brother and his brother's wife, and their kids who were about our age. And my aunt, who I'm still very close to this day, my Aunt Marva in San Diego, she just packed us up in her old beat up Cadillac and just showed us Southern California. I mean, I saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, palm trees, clear blue skies. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. This is actually, there's places in this country where you can live and it doesn't snow, And she took us to Hollywood. I saw Grauman's Chinese Theater for the first time, and I had seen that. I had seen it depicted on I Love Lucy, and
Right.
so the place was becoming real. I remember we were driving up what I know to be Gower Street now, and on Gower, you're passing Paramount Studios, and they have all the marquees of the television shows that are being taped, and we passed one that said Happy Days, which I don't know how old you are, but that was a huge sitcom of my youth. And then we go on to take the Universal Studios tour. And I remember the tram having to stop because they were actually shooting a television show on the lot, and we had to be quiet. And I was like, this is real. This is like in Detroit, we make cars and trucks and tires. But in Hollywood, they make movies and TV shows and music. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to get here, but I'm going to come here. And I did. It was 6 years later, and I became a tour guide at Universal Studios.
Really?
And I worked there for 2 years.
I bet that had to have been kind of surreal to kind of be right next to it every day.
Well, I didn't give you all the details, but yeah, I went to San Diego after high school, and I went to college, and I started studying theater there. So I had done a lot of acting by the time I got to Hollywood in the mid 80s. And yeah, it was very surreal. The tram is going around the lot. You see James Garner, you see, Robert Blake, you see, Sherman Hemsley and Scott Baio, who's doing Charles in Charge. And they were doing the Facts of Life at the time. So you'd see the girls from Facts of Life walking around. And as a tour guide, we were given access to the film sets. We just had to clear it with our supervisor, and he would call the AD, and we would be allowed to go down and watch filming. And that was really exciting for me.
That has to be cool. And here's something I always think about when trying to come at from your perspective as an actor. I've had some limited experience in stage, nothing in anything recorded, but a lot of the stuff that I dealt with was very bare bones. But on a TV set or on a movie set, having everything be so meticulously constructed, what is that kind of feeling? Even though you got tape in some spots to tell you where to go,
it's absolutely, it was mind-boggling in my early years here. I'll tell you another story. My first job before the tour guide job, I worked at a bookstore in Studio City for a couple of months prior to getting the job at Universal. And right across the street was CBS Studio Center, where they were doing St. Elsewhere and Hill Street Blues and shows of that nature. So one day I get to talking with this customer in the store, and he told me he was the best boy on a set of Hill Street Blues. And he said, I said, oh man, are you kidding? I said, that's my favorite television show, man. He said, well, why don't you come over and visit the set? I said, okay. I said, well, what about when I get to the front gate at the studio? He said, just look like you know where you're going. This was before 9/11, obviously. Right? It's completely changed now. Yeah. Now you have to give me your firstborn to get onto the studio lot. But anyway, so I walked over to the studio after I got off work. He gave me the number of the sound stage. And when I got to the front gate, I just walked like I knew where I was going. I found the sound stage and I walked in, And man, I got to tell you, it was like I was walking into a real police station. I mean, you walk down one hallway and into an office, and there's file cabinets with crap, phones and pictures on the wall, and just the attention to detail was mind blowing, especially for a guy who had done equity waiver theater, and you barely had a table and chair. Here's where no expense was spared, and it was pretty mind blowing. And I remember I took a seat over in the corner. I just wanted to watch. And they were filming a scene with Daniel J. Travanti and Veronica Hamill watching the execution of a prisoner.
Ooh.
And I was just sitting there awestruck. And at some point, there's a break in filming, and Daniel J. Travanti walks over to me, and he says, and I'm sitting in the chair, and he's standing right in front of me. He says, "Who are you?" And I'm like, "I'm Tony." He says, "Did you sneak in here, Tony?" I said, "Well, yeah, kind of, but I'm here at the invitation of a crew member." He said, "Okay." He says, "Who are you? What do you do?" I said, "Well, I want to act." He said, "Oh, really?" He says, "Veronica, come here." So Veronica Hamill walks over. Now, bear in mind, I'm a kid, 23 years old. I work across the street at a bookstore. I make $4 an hour. And all of a sudden, Daniel J. Travanti and Veronica Hamill are standing in front. They're the two biggest stars on television at the time. Man. And I've seen every episode of Hill Street Blues before the advent of the VCR. So, I had to be there to watch it.
Right.
And I'm just awestruck. And they were so nice to me. They talked to me. And I just said, I am definitely this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be pursuing. I'm sorry, that was a long story, but
hey, that's what we love.
Yeah. Yeah, they were very, very sweet to me. The set of Hill Street Blues was amazing. And then you leave that soundstage and you walk across the lot, and the entire first 3 stories of St. Eligius, which was the hospital for St. Elsewhere, was constructed in front of a soundstage. It looked like a freaking hospital. Again, the attention to detail was just mind-blowing that they're able to accomplish here in Hollywood.
And it's this kind of dedication that always that refreshes me, at least mentally, kind of seeing the effort that every person often puts into the creation of these stories to help kind of bring us a message, or to bring us the ability to get away from something for a little while. It's kind of.
Let me share one more with you. After I stopped working at the bookstore, I started training to be a tour guide at Universal. And while I was training, they were shooting Back to the Future.
Oh, man.
On the back lot. The entire Courthouse Square area was dressed as Hill Valley. I mean, it was the 1950s. You walk onto the street, and the cars and the signage and all of the extras were dressed in 1950s gear. It was amazing. Yeah, that was my introduction to Hollywood. The set of Back to the Future.
Well, and that's kind of the love that you can sometimes feel when you see those productions. Now, you've had experience not only with the acting side, you've created multiple different things. You had was it Tatiana and Section 8?
Tatiana, yes.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, it was a confluence of a number of different influences, but in short, I had kind of fallen in love with independent film and was kind of getting bored with what was being offered me in Hollywood. And I wanted my chance to be a romantic lead. Well, but I didn't have a story. I didn't have an idea. So my mother was retiring at the time from her job as a court clerk in downtown Detroit. And I called up a lady friend of mine that I used to see whenever I was in town in Detroit, and asked her if she would attend my mother's retirement party with me. And she told me no, that she was already planning to attend. And there was another guy who happened to be a professional athlete. I think he played for the Lions, he was going to attend with her. So, okay, so I'm a little outdone at this point. So I asked a young lady that I was seeing here in Los Angeles if she'd fly home to Detroit with me and attend this affair. And she said, absolutely. And plus she was a singer. And I asked her if she would perform to show up the Lions guy. And she agreed to do a song at my mom's retirement party. And I got to tell you, from the moment we boarded the plane, this woman, she went crazy. She got in fights with the stewardess. We arrived in Detroit. She insulted members of my family. She started making outrageous demands about her place on the list of speakers and performers. She was just totally out of pocket. But anyway, when I got back to LA, I said, I've just lived a romantic comedy. And I wrote it basically almost scene for scene, that I had experienced. And in short, I raised $50,000. I didn't have much money. And my friends and we shot it. I got a group of my friends together and we made the movie. Even shooting some scenes in Detroit, on location in Detroit. And when it premiered at the Pan-African Film Festival, and we won the Audience Favorite Award. And my mind was blown because I had always thought of myself simply as an actor. So ever since that time, I had never been able to think of myself solely as an actor anymore. I was now a writer and a producer. I didn't direct it. I wrote it and produced it. And then I just went about writing every idea that I had in my head about every film or play that I wanted to be a part of. And one of them was called Section 8, which was based on my experience living with my father when I moved to San Diego after high school, and moving in with him and his girlfriend, and some of the conflicts that ensued. So anyway, I wrote that, and I produced it as a stage play. And while the theater was dark, we came in with the camera crew and we shot it on the actual set that we used in the theater.
Oh, cool.
That was kind of my business model. And it worked. And it won Best Feature Film at the Arizona Black Film Festival, at Arizona Black Film Showcase. Let me get the title right. So yeah. And what you see behind me over my shoulder here is from a play, which was the third thing that I produced, called The Devil and Billy Markham, which was a one-man show, which was quite a challenge.
I was going to say, that's a lot of pressure right there.
Well, I didn't put that on myself. It took me a year to learn all the dialogue. I didn't write it. It was written by Shel Silverstein. And I just went about learning it. It came at a very dark time in my life. It was post-divorce. And, I sold my house, and, my family was breaking up and everything. So it was a very dark time. I wasn't really booking anything in terms of jobs. And so a friend of mine suggested I needed to do a one-man show. And theater had always been, to me, an ensemble experience. I started out doing Tennessee Williams and that sort of thing. So I was used to a bunch of actors on stage with me. So I said, I'm going to do theater. I'm going to be the only guy on stage. And but anyway, I wrapped my head around it, and it took me a year to learn the entire piece. And we opened in 2014 at a small theater here in Los Angeles. And I did, in fact, I think I bought this shirt for that show because it was The Devil and Billy Markham, and I played the storyteller. So anyway, it was a wonderful experience. You can find it online on my YouTube page called Tony Winters TV.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought about when I saw this is, okay, so he's got this work that he's created, and it is being he's producing it and everything. But as you mentioned, you didn't direct it. So immediately my thought process is like, well, that doesn't, a lot of times when you're the originator and you have that kind of deep investment in something, it seems like it might be difficult to give that control over to another individual. How does that dynamic work when you get somebody else to direct this thing that you've created?
Well, firstly, with Tatiana, my friend Tom Steinhoff, directed it, who was one of the first guys I met. He was a tour guide with me at Universal in Los Angeles. And Tom, firstly, knew more about film than anybody I knew. Now, I knew acting and I knew writing, but I didn't know how to put a camera in front of people and, and film it, and Tom did. So I asked him if he would direct it, and he did. And plus, we were good enough friends who I knew that I still could exercise, a degree of control over the finished product. But one of the things, you learn as a screen actor, as a film artist, that it is a collaborative effort, that you have to allow all these different disciplines and all these different departments to be able to contribute to the whole. So that was the story with that. And plus, I wanted that third eye. I wanted somebody to be able to say, Tony, this isn't working. And, I didn't want somebody to just rubber stamp anything I wanted to do. I wanted a guy who could say, you know what? We got to cut the scene here, or we got to lose this bit of dialogue. We don't need this scene. We got to add this. I needed somebody who could talk turkey to me. And Tom was that guy. And on Section 8, my friend Carl directed, Carl Gilliard, who was probably my closest Hollywood collaborator. And it was basically the same thing. Tom and I are all old friends. And Carl, I just thought was the right choice. And it turned out that he was.
That's got to be very pleasing to be able to have that kind of an interaction with the people that make everything when it goes smoothly.
Nobody said it went smoothly.
I was trying to figure out, I was like, how do I ask that?
No, there are always bumps in the road, and things always take longer than you budgeted for, or that you planned for. But you do your best with what you have, and you get it done.
Yeah. So what is maybe if somebody were to see your group of work, because there's a lot of times when we look up stuff as being on this side of the viewer side of things, we can look up things on Wikipedia and IMDb, and we'll see certain things. But a lot of the time, if we want to know more about the stage experience of somebody, we don't always have as good of a resource to kind of see that. So a question I like to ask for somebody that's been in a lot of television and movies is, what is maybe one of your favorite stage plays that you have been involved with?
Wow. I was really blessed when I got to San Diego. My college theater had a wonderful program headed by a man named Lyman Seville. But there was also, at the same time, a very a thriving African-American theater community in San Diego. Additionally, there was the Old Globe Theater, which is world renowned, and the San Diego Rep. But anyway, my first production was Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. I mentioned Tennessee Williams. Right. I did the first, to our knowledge, we did the first all-Black production of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. Yeah, and I played Brick. And my very dear friend, Sherlyn Hicks, played Maggie the Cat. And we only had to change a couple of lines. We only had to change a couple of lines in order to tell this story, about Black people owning, 50,000 acres of the richest land this side of the Mississippi. And I think there was also one of the reviewers caught that if there were Black people in Mississippi in the 1950s who had this much land and money, their children certainly didn't go to Ole Miss. But aside from that, I would say that was, even though it was one of my first productions, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof still has a very special place in my heart. We did an excellent production, if I can be so bold, as to characterize my own production. Also did a production of The Lilies of the Field. In fact, that was my last show at the Coronado Playhouse in San Diego. That was a beautiful, beautiful production in which I played the Sidney Poitier role. And gosh, what other plays were standouts in my I'd have to say also at the Coronado Playhouse, I had a very tiny role in a production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, that would have been
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, I played one of the aides, one of the orderlies, Aide Williams, as I recall. That was a ball. I did some really wonderful theater work in San Diego, in college and outside. And I miss those days. I miss those days because we weren't making any money. So it was never about a paycheck or billing or anything like that. It was like, oh, I just want to do this play because I love doing theater. Right. And yeah. Does that answer your question?
I do believe that it does. The differences between theater and television and film are always interesting to see an actor transition from one medium to the other, and sometimes their approach to how they do their roles changes and sometimes they don't. So an example that I give is like if you see Matthew Broderick perform on stage versus how he performs on a movie, it's very similar. He has a similar presence, similar projection. Whereas when you're talking about some of the other actors, like I'm trying to think of a good example, but sometimes it's a drastically different approach. Do you find yourself when you're going between the two mediums changing the way that you approach a role, or do you tend to try and have more consistency between the two approaches?
Well, the internal approach is always the same. You know, the intellectual approach to the role is always the same. You know, you have to understand the character emotionally, understand him physically, where he's coming from and where he's going. You know, every scene has a starting place for your character and what was happening just before the cameras rolled, just before this scene happened, and where's he going when he exits out of the room. You know what I mean? So right. All those kinds of things that you learn in acting 101 are put to use whether you're acting on the stage or acting on camera. So the approach is never the same. I find, and I can only speak for myself, is the difference being in the execution of the character. You know, because in the theater, you have to speak to the 25th or the 50th row or right. to the balcony, you know, whereas in film acting, you know, the camera lens is your audience and you're only speaking to that lens. So you needn't project out. There are no, you know, large gestures that are required, you know, just the raising of an eyebrow, you know, the lowering of a voice, or the raising of a voice are all that's needed to make the same points. So just the execution is different. What happens internally is absolutely the same thing.
That was kind of what I was wondering, because it seems like you'd have so much more flexibility in being able to have that proximity of the recording devices that are going to be able to pick up so much more. And it really is important to be able to pick up as much as you can. And sometimes social media is the best way to do that. And we're going to tell you about that right now. Don't forget, Pudding People, to catch us on all of our social media to keep up to date with what's going on in the world of pudding. Where are you most active, Richard?
Well, you could see some of my activity on our Instagram account.
Would that happen to be at Pudding Guys?
That one would, yes.
Amazing. You know what? That is also our Facebook. So you can about once a month see it. If you're lucky. If you're lucky, we'll post something on Facebook. We're probably most on Twitter at Real Pudding Guys. But of course, you can catch us on Patreon as
Pudding Guys.
That's right. Where for just $1 a day, you can support us as we bring you new interviews, new material, new stuff to make our interviews and material look better. It's just fantastic for only $1 a month. A paltry
sum. Not a lot.
No, not really.
It really isn't. That's actually $12 over the course of a year.
Right. Small change to help the pudding guys keep going. And we love our supporters. We look forward to seeing you on social media. Very informative as always. Back to the important stuff now. Now we've talked a little bit about stage and screen. You have some really particularly interesting stuff coming up. You've got a couple productions that are just right around the corner, one of which is named Yellowjackets, correct?
Yes.
Now it's going to be on Showtime, was it?
Showtime, November 14th. I'm in the pilot episode. It's an interesting project in that it's about a high school girls soccer team and a championship girls soccer team, and they're on their way to play in a tournament, and their plane crashes, and they crash in the Canadian wilderness, and those who survive are left to their own devices to survive in the wilderness, and then so they become these warring factions, almost like Lord of the Flies. Thank you. And but then they're rescued and brought back to civilization. So you have your adult cast, you have them as adults, and you have the girls as teens. So you have them 25 years apart.
Wow.
I play their high school principal. So you visit me in both 1995 and in the present day. So I had to age or de-age.
I was wondering about that. I was going to say, they're going to be using some CGI on you on this. Are we going to see?
It's all in the makeup chair.
All the makeup. Oh, that's always the best. Some of those makeup preparations I know can take just a little bit of time. How long did it take to try and make you look the appropriate age for this film?
You know what I did? I lost my mustache for the younger man because we shot the older Tony first. So I kept the mustache for the older scene, and then as for the younger guy, I lost it. And they gave me a hair piece, where my hair is a lot more thicker and more color in it. And so that was kind of how we did it. And then the makeup wasn't that extensive. They didn't put a bunch of lines and wrinkles in my face. We didn't do all that, because I'm supposed to be the age I am now in the present day. And I was supposed to be, 25 years younger.
See, I thought you were going to have a lot of fun there. They're going to have, it's like, okay, we're going to be adding these pieces, and there's going to be some glue, and you can't touch it, and probably shouldn't eat while you do this.
Well, I did one of those. Digressing for a moment, I did a film called The Crazies with Tim Oliphant. And I play a priest who gets attacked by one of the crazies. And so Tim finds me on a gurney underneath a sheet. And then when he pulls away the sheet, that's when all the prosthetics were implemented that I had to get fitted for. My mouth was sewn shut, my eyes were sewn shut. It's a very riveting scene. You should see it. It's on again on my YouTube page under Tony Winters TV.
That's actually a fun little movie. Horror movies can be like, yes. I'm a fan of most movies.
Okay.
Even if my ratings don't always reflect as such, it's always an appreciation no matter what. And a good horror film that takes just a slight different, and because there's only so many monsters and so many scenarios, and just taking that and just tweaking it in just one little way. Sometimes that's all that's necessary to make it really interesting. And that was a fun one. Now you get to work with Tim again coming up, right?
Yes. Tim is one of the stars of National Champions, which is a film I did actually earlier this year. During the pandemic, we shot down in New Orleans, and Tim is one of the stars of the film. National Champions opens Thanksgiving weekend, November 24th. And it's about a college quarterback who ignites a players' strike on the eve of the big game. And it stars J.K. Simmons, who you will remember from Whiplash, Oscar Academy Award winner J.K. Simmons, Uzo Aduba, who many will know as 3-time Emmy winner from Orange is the New Black, and Tim Blake Nelson, Coen Brothers' favorite Tim Blake Nelson, who was one of my favorites. That's who I was blown away by meeting, Tim Blake. Also Christian Chenoweth, David Koechner. Awesome. David Koechner became a good buddy of mine on this film, and Lil Rel Lowry.
Jeffrey Donovan.
I'm sorry?
Jeffrey Donovan's in there?
Jeffrey Donovan. Right. Most of my scenes are with Jeffrey. He's a wonderful actor. And anyway, I had a great time. But the director on this film, Rick Roman Waugh, is a beast, man. Let me tell you, this guy, you know, I've always kind of held that the director has to be the smartest guy in the room. He was always the smartest guy in the room. He knew he could speak to you at length about your character better than you could. And I do my homework, man. I mean, I do you know, a background on the character, and, you know, I come up with a new walk, and I really do a lot of extensive work that I used to do in the theater. And anyway, Rick could talk to you about your character at length. He understood your character's place in the story, your motivations, you know, where you're going, what you're doing in the scene, and why you're in the scene. And then he could turn on a dime and talk to the director of photography about the lens we're going to use to cover this scene, or the sound guy, or the gaffer, how exactly we want to light it. He's amazing. I don't think I've ever worked with a director who was as fluid, or as fluent, I should say, in both areas of filmmaking, you know, as tuned into the performances as he is the technical aspects of filmmaking. Rick Roman Waugh, man, he's the man.
Well, and he started in stunts, really, right?
Yes.
I mean, he was in just a ton of films doing some ridiculous stunts, because I mean, it's a lot of action, a lot of sci-fi, and and then seeing that switch over to a director, you don't see that real often. And I wonder if that's kind of what it is. Just like, okay, it's time not to take a beating anymore. To kind of,
when you get a chance to meet him and see how brilliant he is, you'll understand that there's a reason he's in the position he's in today. You know, there's a reason for it. Is because he's just the smartest guy in the freaking room, man.
So, are you a sports fan yourself?
Yes.
So this subject matter is really pertinent to what's going on in sports today. How does this kind of affect you?
Yeah, it's part of the national conversation, and I got to tell you, my personal jury was out on this subject. I hadn't decided whether or not I thought it was a good idea for college athletes to be paid. You know, after working on this film, I've come to a conclusion, which I'll keep to myself, because I don't want to say how I personally feel. I don't want people to go and say, oh, you know, this is contradicting how he really feels about this subject, you know. Right, so I don't want to put my personal viewpoint out there until after the film has been released for a while.
Well, it's probably just as well. It's let the piece speak for itself. And
yeah. But it certainly opened up my mind to the arguments on both sides of the issue.
Now, do you tend to be more of a college sports guy, or are you more of a professional? What's your area that attracts you?
More of a professional sports, and here in Los Angeles, you know, I love the Rams have come back to LA, and the Rams this season drafted my quarterback from my Detroit Lions, Matt Stafford. And my Rams are 4-1, and my Lions are 0-5, which is pretty sad. So the team of my youth, the team of my hometown is sorry every year, and I hate to admit it, but it's God's honest truth. And
a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the town and my adopted hometown of Los Angeles, you know, it's here we expect our teams to win. And they do. You know, the Lakers are always in the hunt. The Dodgers are won last night. You know, so the series is now 3-2 Atlanta. So you know, so I'm a big Dodger fan. And when I realized that I was living in the town and our team was the Dodgers. That team that brought Jackie Robinson into Major League Baseball, that broke the color line, was my local team. I was able to give up my Detroit Tigers, and embrace my Los Angeles Dodgers.
So
and just as a footnote, my dad played in the Negro Leagues for
oh,
the Kansas City Monarchs, which was Robinson's old team.
that's cool. What position?
He was a second baseman. He played multiple positions, but that was his favorite.
That's cool. I mean, there's such a rich history with sports, and we were talking about this just a little bit before we started, but the way that a film can kind of create this romantic impression of sports. What is it about a film that can kind of bring it to a level that you don't always see when you're just seeing it go from day to day?
Well, I think film has the luxury of exploring the characters and exploring the story behind the actual game. When you turn on your local sports teams, wherever you may happen to live, you don't know what's going on with these players at home. You don't know what's going on between them and the front office of the franchise. You have no idea of that, but films are able to take you behind the scenes, like Robert Redford in The Rookie, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Kevin Costner and Bull Durham. Mm-hmm. And there's been some wonderful, wonderful sports films made throughout the years.
Well, they're getting to a point now. I mean, there's always been, it's the final game, or this is X player's last season. They're trying to hang on. There's been a lot of that, but in recent years, it seems like they're able to peel back just a little bit of the veil and show some of the behind the scenes, and still even be able to add that kind of drama and that kind of impact to other things, like Moneyball, for example.
You took the words right out of my, that was going to be my next example with Brad Pitt. Yeah. And show how some of these decisions get made, even taking it into the realm of reality television, taking the conversation into the realm of reality television, Hard Knocks on HBO. I'm glued to that show every season. I love watching these young guys and learning about their families and their struggle to make the team. And then when I watch them play in regular season games, I'm like, I know that guy. I really don't know him from Adam, but I know that guy. I know his mom and his dad, and I know his story, and it kind of humanizes the players, and it makes it relatable. So
a connection where you wouldn't have it.
Story is always the key. It's always about the story.
Now, a lot of my stories have more to do with food, if you couldn't tell by the title of the show. So we always talk just a little bit about food, because that's something that kind of connects us all.
Okay.
On the West Coast, are you a pizza guy at all?
Sure.
What is your absolute favorite style of pizza, or is there a place that it's like, I can go to this place and this place gives me the most fantastic pizza every single time I go?
Absolutely. Abso-freaking-lutely. There's a small chain here in Los Angeles called Numero Uno. They have a pizza. It's a thick crust pizza, and it's called the Slaughterhouse 5.
Nice.
Dude, I'm telling you, it'll make you want to slap your mother.
Tastes just like Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh, it's hopefully not, but it is absolutely delicious. That's my favorite LA pizza. Though there's also a place here not far from me in Studio City called Maselli's. Now, oddly, Maselli's is on Ventura Cahuenga Boulevard, and it's a what do you call the restaurants where the waiters sing and
there are restaurants where the waiters sing?
Yeah, they have singing waiters there. Anyway, they make a great freaking pizza. I had like a meat lovers there. I'm a total carnivore. It was absolutely delicious. But if you're in LA, you want some good pizza, the Slaughterhouse 5 at Numero Uno.
I will definitely have to keep that one in mind. We also like to go into the realm of fantasy. A lot of our podcast has to do with pop culture, especially where it intersects with comics and comic books. So we talk a lot about comic book television and movies and things like that. Are you a comic book fan at all?
I certainly was as a kid, and I've seen some of the superhero films that have been produced in recent years. I think Robert Downey Jr. is brilliant as Tony Stark, which was my favorite superhero when I was a kid. Plus, his name was Tony. So all of my friends at the time, these were just cartoons. We couldn't even envision them making live action films out of these characters with their superpowers. But one of my friends became Spider-Man. That was Kevin. And my friend Ali, he was Submariner, and I was Tony Stark, Iron Man. Tony Stark makes you feel he's the coolest cat with the heart of steel. I still remember the song.
That's awesome.
Something today's generation really lacks, man. They don't get great television show songs, but anyway, I'm out in the weeds.
There are some exceptions. I mean, there have been some directors that have at least for an episode taken the chance on it. The last season of Lucifer, they had an episode that was all musical. They did that in Scrubs. They did it in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, where they give a chance to just kind of go in a slightly different direction. So I think it's kind of got the potential to come there, and especially with some of the Disney remakes. I mean, all the original Disney films had such a strong musical element, or the remakes are going. The Aladdin remake, for example, had still that strong musical element. So you can get it. It's maybe not quite like what it was in the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. But it's still got a grain. It's got a little something.
Okay.
If you had your choice to be any comic book character in any movie, who would it be?
The Green Hornet.
That's a good choice.
I thought he was so cool. Britt Reed, played by the great Van Williams when I was a kid. I dug the little fedora and the mask and the green trench coat, and having Kato drive him in the Black Beauty. Yeah, I dug the Green Hornet, man.
I watched that show. I watched it for Bruce Lee. He was. We all
did. But you asked, so I had to give you something.
Oh yeah, that's a good choice, because you got to go with those deep cuts. You can have some fun with that.
Yeah.
So to wrap things up, for my listeners that want to pay attention to, first of all, you've got the Yellowjacket is coming out here in November. Was it 14th? Is that right?
Yes, November 14th.
And when is National Champions come out?
Thanksgiving weekend, November 24th, 10 days later.
Fantastic. And if they want to pay attention to you and know what you're doing and where you're going to be next, is Instagram the best way to find you?
I think so. Pretty Tony Winters on Instagram. I'm Tony Winters on Facebook. As long as, if you send me a note and saying, hey, I saw you on Everybody Loves Pudding. And I know you're not some crazy person because I got hacked on Facebook.
Oh,
yeah. I lost my Facebook and my Instagram. I had to start all over like a year ago after I lost 10 years of, anyway. So I'm Tony Winters on Facebook, and I am Tony Winters 128 on Twitter.
Nice.
And there's also my my aforementioned YouTube page, Tony Winters TV. And I respond to fans all the time there.
Well, that's what we love to see, that kind of connection. A lot of times it feels like the people that you admire that make the things that you love are sometimes very separated from you as a viewer. But to see people that have that connection is it's a wonderful thing. And I definitely appreciate it. And I appreciate you coming on to the show and talking with us.
Man, this has been a joy. I just feel like I've been a chatty Cathy for the last hour, but I've enjoyed our conversation very, very much. I appreciate you.
I hope to see you again, and you have something else coming out. You are always welcome. Open invitation. Thank you very much.
Well, God bless you, and God bless your viewers, and I hope to see you soon.